All right, here now is one of the attorneys behind this lawsuit, Derek Schmidt from Kansas. Derek, good to see you. So give me the theory of the case, what you guys are going to present to the courts.
Well, it's pretty straightforward, Sean. The basic theory is that under our system of government, the power of the purse belongs to the Congress, to the legislative branch. Congress didn't give that power to the president to do what he's done here. And essentially, the president has just grabbed that power in an extra lawful way, it acted illegally, to essentially spend nearly $400 million in public money, which is what they're doing, is spending public money to pay off these individual loans. If that's going to be done, and I'm certainly not advocating it, but if that's going to be done, it must be done by Congress clearly deciding that's the proper use of public money.
Yeah, but what it tries to do here, the Biden administration does, is try to say that's right, the Congress does have the power of the purse. The Constitution does say that. However, we have a pandemic, and under the pandemic procedures, I'm able to spend all this money to deal with the pandemic, and therefore I'm going to forgive $400 billion of student loans.
Yeah, well, there is no pandemic exception to the Constitution, Sean, and the rule of law still applies even in the midst of it. We've had our experience here in Kansas over that. We have a liberal Democrat governor who thinks a lot like Joe Biden that the ends justifies the means, who tried to order churches closed and to penalize Kansans for gathering together for the purpose of religious worship on Easter Sunday a couple of years ago, and used the pandemic as an excuse. There, a federal judge said, Governor, you can't do that. It's illegal. And likewise here, I expect federal judges are going to say, Mr. President, you can't do that either. It's also illegal.
So timeline, how long will it take to adjudicate this case?
Nobody knows. The courts move at their own pace. We have applied for preliminary injunctive relief, a temporary restraining order, a preliminary injunction. Obviously, we've asked the court to move swiftly. Because we think, unfortunately, the president rolled this out and created certain expectations. We want to be sure that we get some resolution as quickly as we can. But ultimately, it's up to the courts to decide the timeline.
That was going to be my next question about an injunction, because if you don't get an injunction and Joe Biden spends $400 billion paying back these student loans, you can't unring the bell. You're not going to get the money back. It'll have been spent, and the case really doesn't have its intended purpose, which is to save all this money for taxpayers.
Which, of course, is why we've asked for a temporary restraining order and immediate relief, and it's up to the court to decide whether we get it.
So Ms. Presley, she was at her press conference. We played that video before you came into her interview. And in essence, she's saying that she wants to unburden millions of Americans from student loan debt. And listen, I'm compassionate. I get that. But you know what? There's a lot of people who have mortgages on their homes. You want to unburden them, pay off their mortgages. We could go down a list of a whole pay off people's credit card debt. That is the dumbest philosophy, to say I'm going to pay people's debt off that they have an obligation to pay, and think that's going to make the country stronger and better.
Look, Sean, my focus here as Attorney General is on the legality or illegality of what the president's trying to do. And at the end of the day, Congress, which does have the power of the purse, has done more than its share to run up this $30 trillion in public debt that our nation's taken on. We don't need the president chiming in on his own to do even more on top of that. But your point is very well taken. There is on the policy issue that underlies this, there is a fundamental fairness issue here. There are people who decided not to go to college, and in part may have decided that based upon financial calculations and consideration. People who paid cash or paid their own way or worked their way through college or went to the military to pay for college. Other people who took on student loans and then paid them off, and none of them get benefit from this approach. Instead, they were the ones who actually worked their way through, carried their own load, and now they and all of the other taxpayers are being asked by the President of the United States to step up and also pay off the cost of others who took on debt at an arm's length transaction and now are going to be having part of that forgiven under the president's proposal. It's just not reasonable or fair. And the last point on that, Sean, it's not just people who are, paying taxes, which is nearly everybody, or who have had some intersection with higher education or post-secondary education. It's all of us, because this is just another step in this ongoing enormous explosion in federal spending and liberal state spending by Democrat governors that is driving all of this extraordinary inflation that's driven up the price of everything from gasoline to food. The last thing we need is to pile still more big government spending on top of everything that's already been done and make this inflation and cost of living problem even worse. And that's what this does.
Attorney General Schmidt, well said, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.